Hello, I'm Jordan, and today I'm going to be talking about my ongoing read along with Steve Donahue of Rats in honor of Nonfiction November. And Still really enjoying this book. It's not quite what I expected in a number of ways, but it isn't a disappointment by any means. These chapters that we're covering this week largely deal with exterminators. And Sullivan seems to have a kind of he seems to be kind of enamored with exterminators, and he seems to kind of think of them as kind of unsung, underappreciated, quiet heroes. Um, to put it mildly, I do not share that view of exterminators, but it doesn't matter, and it's a testament to Sullivan's writing that it doesn't matter. The way he writes about these people is extremely engaging. As I've mentioned in the last two videos, this book is at least as much about people as it is about rats. Which, I mean, I perhaps was hoping for a little more rat talk in a book called Rats that claims to be about rats. But it's not a disappointment by any means. Like I said, because of the care, his work, his ability to sketch people is pretty impressive. But also because it is about rats. It's simply about the human relationship to rats, particularly urban rats, and that relationship is, of course, to kill them. Hence, exterminators. But again, it's very well done. There is a great, charming, funny little chapter that we read this week, in which Sullivan and two of his friends attempt to catch a live rat with the plans of releasing it later. It's not exactly clear what they intend to do with it once they catch it before they release it, but it's a very funny chapter. They fail, of course. They didn't take into consideration that a rat will naturally stick with what it knows rather than trying something new generally. So they fail, and then that transitions rather darkly into the 9/11 attacks, because that night, or that morning after they go home late that night, early the next morning. Later that morning, the World Trade Center came down. And this is a book, like I said, very much about New York City, and so that is crucial. It happened to happen the year that Sullivan chose to observe these rats in this alley. And then that transitions very gracefully, I think, into Sullivan talking about the plague, which is another massive catastrophe. He talks about the famous Black Death in the 1300s. There's a fact that seems to be lost on him, which is that the plague was spread not so much by rats as the fleas that lived on the rats, which also incidentally lived on cats and dogs. But that's, again, people are going to hate rats. That's cool. I mean, as he points out, rats are vectors of diseases, 100%. So there's some validity to that. But the talk about the plague is fascinating. It's a fascinating subject for me. And then he segues from that into coming back to the present day, talking about the response in the aftermath of 9/11. Regarding the plague, he brings up Daniel Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year, which he writes very eloquently about, and which I read in the early days of the COVID pandemic, because I saw it on Steve's Daily Penguin, actually. The way that book kind of portrays London as an organism going through an intense traumatic event, which he ties very wonderfully to New York City after the 9/11 attacks. And naturally, since this is a book about rats, it becomes about the response to pest control in the aftermath of that. And apparently there were large projects going on in order to prevent rats from taking over the areas in downtown that had been cordoned off. And apparently it was a huge issue. He talks about seeing rat bait everywhere, lining every alley. Thankfully, his own alley, Eden's Alley, was spared from that. We discover at the end of these chapters. Again, I think Sullivan is going for kind of a pathos that is difficult for me to get on board here, because essentially what he's saying is New Yorkers all came together after this tragedy in order to kill thousands and thousands and thousands of rats. But again, I understand the sentiment, and it's, like I said, it's extremely engaging in its writing. And this is a fascinating book still, even if it's not exactly what I was expecting. I do I don't want to say that it's a problem for me, but I do kind of wish this book was a little more about rats. We haven't heard anything about what or how rats live in their nests, for example. We keep on hearing talk about the nests. We don't know how they live in their nests. We don't know how they relate to each other, how they socialize. These are all things that I have no idea about urban rats, and I would love to know. Largely, it's been about people killing rats, and that's fascinating too. I'm kind of hoping we get more about rats maybe in the final 5 chapters. But again, not really a complaint. I am enjoying this very much. And let me know what you guys are thinking if you're joining us. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.